everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid. And it's been a couple weeks since spring ball has wrapped up. And during that time, I've taken stock of the information that has been out there, watched the film that I've had access to, and tried to put together what I've learned about the Wisconsin offense coming out of spring ball and going into fall camp, and what we can expect going forward into the season. And I think the first area that I want to touch on is this idea of the offensive identity. That word identity has been hanging over the program since the Luke Fickell era began, and now the offense has it rediscovered its old identity? Has it created a new one? Well, if we take what the coaches have said about the offense, they are combining, or they have rediscovered, the old school Wisconsin physicality, and they have combined it with a new school mentality, a new school sophistication, on top of the NFL style professionalism that we have within the system. And so what does all of that mean? Well, let's talk about philosophical first, and then we'll go into the scheme and how things have changed a lot to stay the same. Big things when we talk about the NFL style and the professionalism within the system. Honestly, a big part of what that means is they have gone away from the simplicity of the system of the air raid, where you had all these moving parts post-snap. You had simplified play calling only what was necessary, saying what was only necessary, and letting the players do the work post-snap. That works for a lot of football. It works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. Some players, some systems need everything spelled out for them. That's why NFL play calls are like 17 words long. And we have brought that into the system. While I have not seen exactly what their play calling is like, knowing Coach Grimes' influences from Dirk Cutter to the Shanahan system and everything in between, we know that the offense has grown beyond the simple let everything happen post-snap offense to where we're building everything pre-snap, pre-motion, and then the play happens as designed in the play name and on the paper. That level of sophistication is going to take a lot of pressure off of the players, and it is going to put it on the coaching staff. Because now, instead of the players reacting to what they see on the field, they have to go to exact landmarks, and they have to know how to get to those landmarks when the defense presents something different. So that is where you're getting this NFL style system in terms of the philosophy. What is the actual play calling? Honestly, if we look at what we're actually seeing on the football field, I see a power spread hybrid offense that blends heavy run elements in a pro style sense with wide zone, with duo, with a passing game that is taking components of the vertical passing game, but is heavily influenced by the college style power spread / air raid passing and screen game. So while you're not going to see the Paul Chryst offense of 2022 come back in. It's not going to happen. You're going to see on the football field a lot of things that are going to make the sweater vest people happy. We're going to be running the ball a lot. And we're going to be getting big plays in the run game a lot. But when you really look under the hood and you draw up these plays and you catalog these plays, a lot of them you're going to recognize. And not from Paul Chryst, but from Phil Longo and from coaches that we have coached against in the past however many years. Looking at examples last year, particularly from like Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, you're going to see that modern flair built upon the bones of the old school Wisconsin offense, but it's not going to be the same. And I welcome it because it was proven that we couldn't do the air raid system as it was originally intended. And as I've always said, air raid influences in the passing game have always been there. The run game is basically the same. We're just going to be the emphasis on different components, but it's going to feel different. And sometimes the feeling is all you need. And that's what we have in 2025 to look forward to. So let's get into a little bit more about what I saw at the spring showcase. I've seen between bits and pieces, and I've taken every play that I've seen so far, and I've made sure that I don't have any duplicates. Luckily, I've seen a lot of plays from various angles. I've seen probably 60 or 70 plays from the spring showcase. And what takeaways do I have of where we are and where we're going to go forward? Let's start with the overall big picture of what we see. Huge difference that we're seeing is the variety of formations and the ability to use shifts and motions to get in and out of those various formations. Now, one thing those of you who were at the spring showcase would have noticed is the scrimmage portion of the showcase was not a game. The offense was not game planning against the defense. They were going by a script to make sure that they ran the exact plays that they wanted to. And then the defense, vice versa. Defense was running the schemes that they wanted to use in the certain situations that were built within the practice script. So while certain plays hit better than others, you saw a lot of essentially sequences of plays that were sequenced together, not necessarily for play calling, but for ease of dissecting once we were looking at the film. So, for example, you would see an entire series of plays where it was like they were in the same formation the entire time on offense. And that's what we do at practice. We're not game planning at practice. We have the 16 plays in our Skelly period that we need to run. These are the plays we need to run. And the only thing that's going to change off of that sequence is if there is injuries or something like that where the time schedule has changed and we have not been able to complete what we expected to, making some changes there. But from what I have seen, even with that in mind, lots of different formations. They were using various personnel groups. Not as many as I thought. I didn't see any 10 personnel. I didn't see any true 20 personnel with 2 true running backs. But many different variations of 11 personnel, variations of 12 personnel, 13 personnel, a lot of different looks. And they use those players all over the field. You saw all of the main receiver positions in motion. You saw all those main receiver positions in different spots on the football field. You saw the tight ends in and out of the backfield, on the line, off the line, in the slot. So there's a lot of moving parts that I really like seeing. But the best part about all of that is you've added this complexity with all of these varying formations and motions and stuff like that. And yet you still saw the same core plays being run out of a variety of different motions, formations, backfield actions, etc. You ran the same basic plays. And to the offense, it simplifies things because you're just multiplying the offense. You're taking key core components and then you're multiplying it. To a defense, you're giving them a new play because different formation adjustments affect how run fits happen, etc. So you can't just say, oh, they're just running the same play out of different formations. No, to us, it's different on defense. So that is something that's really good to see. So what we're going to do here to talk about how that, an example of that is the key run play that we've been hearing about the entire time since Coach Grimes has got here is the wide zone. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pull up Huddle here in a second, and I'm just going to show you various varieties of how they ran the wide zone at the spring showcase to show you how, while this offense still is keeping some of that simplicity that we were hoping to have from the air raid, they are multiplying the offense instead of just adding new plays to it. All right, so let's get into it. So one thing I'm also doing here is I am attempting to do more of the editing and the video play, etc. What do I say with this stuff? In camera, so to speak, so I can spend less time editing and more time actually getting this or get this stuff up to you guys quicker. So if you see me looking over here, it's because I've got my second screen set up with my recording software, with my notes, and also so that is going to allow me to turn this off. That's the wrong one. Yeah, see, still don't know what the hell I'm doing with this stuff. There we go. So now that we have that up, you can see my notes. But now, more importantly, you can see Huddle. So let's get into how the different ways we saw the Badgers run wide zone at the spring showcase. So let's start here. So for those, again, who don't remember what the wide zone, how it's basically run. Okay, running back is going to be aiming usually for the edge of the line of scrimmage or the inside shoulder of the tackle, depending on how wide the edge defender is out here. And play side offensive linemen are working to run to get these guys turned upfield. And if they can't, they are just going to work to wall them off. And that's going to create a cut. And Huddle don't want to work with me there, so that's fine. So instead of working to turn a defender, they're working to wall them off. And we usually see that a lot more on the front side. Backside guys, they're thinking cutoff. So they're going to work a combo like this to create a cut back. So then the running back would be reading the edge defender. If the edge defender is outside of the tackle, he's going to look to cut, and he's going to look to get vertical. As he's looking for that cut, take that guy off. If the nose widens, then he's going to look to bang it back even farther, but he is looking to get vertical with his cut. All right, so that's the wide zone in a nutshell. So let's talk about a few of the variations that I saw at the spring showcase. For one, a formation that I saw a lot from the film that I saw was a basic condensed 3-by-1 look like this. And what we would get is either we get wide receiver, and in most cases, we would have Jaden Ballard out here. We'd have Vinny Anthony down here. We would have Tucker Ashcraft a lot of times right here. And we would have Jackson Aker in a situation like this. This would be a 12 personnel variant of this. If they weren't running with 12 personnel, then they would have someone like Tyrell Henry in the slot right there. So let's just go with 11 personnel, and we'll go for it. And then the running back right here, that was Dilin Jones. All right, so let's look at some variations that we saw. So big one, obviously, we just saw the basic wide, weak side outs, wide zone. Again, we get that. We get defenses to over-adjust to the formation. We hit it back to the field. A lot of times we'd have the formation aligned to the boundary. So more like that. And they would want to run to the wide side of the field because there's a lot more space that would force safety to align differently, etc. But we're just going to put them down the middle of the field here for that. So we saw the weak side wide zone. Obviously, next big one that we saw a lot was the split flow wide zone. So we would get, again, backfield action like this out of pistol. And then we would get our wide zone set up here. So we'd work for width here. I'm going to switch this now so I don't go crazy. Work for width here. Work for width here. We would work cut off, and then climb and cut. Okay, So again, just like we were talking about here with the backfield action, we're reading number 2. If number 2 is out, I'm in. Looking for number 1. If number 1 is in or out, I'm in. If number 1 is in, I'm out. Okay, so that's the basic backfield action. We're looking to hit it vertical here, or vertical here. Okay, where the split flow component comes in is where the H-back would be coming across the formation, and he's looking to make sure nothing comes from the outside of the B gap to squeeze down the line. This will give our running back a little more chance to have patience, dig a little bit deeper in this before he gets upfield, because that's where the key component of the wide zone is his ability to push the read as long into the play as possible and then putting his foot in the ground and getting vertical, which is going to cause these linebackers to overflow. Okay, so we saw this both out of shotgun and pistol. Okay, another variation that we saw is we would get split flow, but we would get it off of jet sweep action, to where we would have our slot receiver in here. We'd have our tight end right here. Or, excuse me, our tight end right there. That'd be Tucker Ashcraft. And we would motion jet sweep action right here to then post snap. Huddle, come on, work with me. No, huddle, come on, work with me. That's fine. Move on to the next side. So then the running back would come across and he would be looking to get inside right here. Same wide zone action, but we would come off of the jet sweep action. So we would fake a little pitch inside and then come back with the inverted sidecar alignment action. Okay. Another one that we saw off of this action as well that I really liked is they would run bash wide zone. So what's bash? So what we would have here was we would get this jet sweep action. We would then send him across the form. Why does this not want to work with me? Okay, we'd send him across the formation. We'd send the running back out. Usually the wide receiver would crack down. And then maybe the backside tackle would latch on here. But most likely what we got was a read where we would wide zone to the right, and then our quarterback would be reading right here for a naked inverted read. So if this end crashes, then we give the jet sweep, and then we're usually 2-on-1 out here on the flat. Or if he keeps his contain, the QB will just keep it and he'll run behind the bash action, which is the run going away from the running back and away from the slot receiver. So saw this once. Did not see Billy Edwards keep it. Obviously, it's camp, so he's not going to. But that's another variation that we saw. Okay. One more that I want to go through, and this is going to sadden those of you who got all excited when you heard that the I formation was coming back to Wisconsin. Good old-fashioned power football is coming back. Boy, you guys got excited. And I hate to burst your bubble. But when they did come out in I formation like this, and the Badgers defense would align accordingly, and we flip these guys, he would come down, move him out there. Anyways, power. Okay, 13 personnel essentially, because we're counting the fullback as a tight end. And what did they do? They ran split flow wide zone. Split flow from 2-back I formation. We do an action like that, Ball's coming here. We're going to wide zone, working for width on the front side. And then we're going to arrest the flow on the back side. A lot of times we'll scoop these guys, maybe bring the tight end across the formation. The fullback is cleaning up the backside, but it's still wide zone. This sets up for play action where we're coming back, going to the flat, etc. But we're not lining up in I formation and running G lead like we used to back in the day, or GT lead. It's still wide zone. So as we saw there, we've got a bunch of variations of the wide zone. There's still more. I'm not going to go through every single one. I just want to give you guys some examples of what we saw. So let's get back to here. And let's talk about what else we saw at the spring showcase offensively. All right, so on top of the wide zone, the complement plays that came off of it, in which they would run pin and pull with the tackle. I like seeing that. Riley Mullman showed some really good athleticism. I've been dogging Riley Mullman since 2023. He improved last year, and you can tell he's put in the work in the offseason. He is showing he's leaner in a good way. He's quicker in a good way. And they used him in a bunch of situations that I saw where he would just get out in front of that wide zone and get to the sideline. They would run what we call crunch, which is essentially a double trap, where you get the action of most of the offensive line going to the left, and you get the two guards pulling to the right, and that would create two. You would run it with wide zone action, but you'd give them two cut points, either hit outside the first guard or inside the first guard or inside the second guard while everyone else is blocking down. Really like seeing that. All right, so, and then finally, just talking about with the run game, let's talk about the backs that we saw and what this means for the running back room going into fall camp. Obviously, Dilin Jones has positioned himself I don't want to say by accident, because I think he probably would have gotten there eventually, but early in camp, we heard more Dupree and Yacamelli. Dilin Jones was having a little bit ball security issues, but towards the end of camp, and especially in the spring showcase, you could see that Dilin Jones is the perfect back for this system, because he has the speed and the quickness to force the defenses to respect his speed. And therefore, that really sets up the wide zone, because he can really push his cut wide and get those linebackers to overflow before he puts his foot in the ground and gets forward. He's still getting contacted on the line of scrimmage just as much as he would at any other time. But because now he's taking that contact on the side instead of head on, it allows him to fall forward more and get extra yards and be more efficient with how he's running. Yacamelli, we saw, and he is going to be a nice complement, a 1B back if we're thinking Dilin Jones is a first and second down type player. He does everything Dilin Jones does, just a little bit slower. Yacamelli, I want to make this clear. Yacamelli, probably, if you put him in a straight line sprint, is probably faster, but Dilin Jones hits the hole faster. He hits the hole harder than Yacamelli. Yacamelli is a good one cut and go running back. He is. But Dilin Jones has a better sense of the gaps than Yacamelli does. Yacamelli's big run in this scrimmage was on an inside zone. So that's showing he is improving his overall game, but I still think he is a long way behind Dilin Jones in terms of being a complete back. He's still going to get enough carries, so I think justify the fact that he came back. Dupree, obviously he got hurt towards the end of camp, spring ball. We didn't see how he was going to be used at the spring showcase. We didn't see a lot of the plays that you would expect maybe his backup in the second down or the second and long situation, third down categories, uh, first and short situate, plays that you expect the change of pace guy to come in. A lot of times that change of pace guy was Cade Yacamelli. And obviously he doesn't add the same thing in the passing game that Darian Dupree is. I think Darian Dupree is going to be a lot more involved as a slot receiver. I think he's going to get 75% of his carries as a running touches as a running back, but I think he's going to get plenty of touches as a slot receiver because, one, I think we have slot receivers who have positional versatility who can play outside as well, and he adds a different dynamic. He is the type of player that could be a real, true, all-around threat that can be on the field and take the handoff, take the ball in various ways. I think he's going to be entrusted to do that this year. Is it going to be enough touches to keep him interested and stick behind Dilin Jones for another year? Time will tell. But that is a 3-horse backfield right now that I think can produce a lot of yards. Last one, though, getting Ituka, he looked faster, he looked twitchier, and you add that on top of his bowling ball running mentality, he could turn into a touchdown vulture as the season goes on, especially as Dilin Jones's carries start to mount up. Even if the rotation is as strong as we hope it's going to be, I still think there's going to be situations where we're going to need a big back to get in there and be physical in short yardage situations. And I think getting Ituka could do that. And we'll see how it goes. I think right there, that's a solid 4 back room. And barring injuries, we should get a lot better production out of the running back room than we've gotten the last couple of years. It is more complete. It is more athletic. And the only thing that's going to stand in the way of that is injuries. All right. Let's talk about the passing game. And like I said, you can see Coach Grimes's influence on the philosophy of the passing game. His influences. You see the Dirk Cutter, chuck it and duck it version of the West Coast offense. A lot of vertical passes. But like I have been saying from the beginning, he's a collaborative play caller, and you can see Kenny Guyton, and you can see Blake Rowland's influence on the passing game. So, from Kenny Guyton, obviously, you've got the air raid style passing concepts like mesh, stick, sail, snag, levels. These formational concepts that Phil Longo ran. I think what the difference we saw, though, with these type of plays is these are not the plays where they're searching for space. They're just running with a different mentality. You're just telling everybody where to go and giving a quarterback the progression. And instead of trusting the quarterback to make a determination if is he open or is he not open, they are reading coverage. And that's going to open these plays up in different ways. So we saw some of these different concepts, and I liked how they looked. So let's take a look at one of them, or 2 of them here that I, in particular, really liked from the spring showcase. And I just want to make sure I got the right thing up. So we're going to turn that guy off. We're going to turn that guy off. Look at that, right to the right thing right away. All right, no, that's not what I wanted to do. So still learning how to do this correctly. Turn that guy off, turn that guy off. Good. Back here. Okay, now. Okay, just put all these guys back where they were. There we go. All right, so. So let's go through a couple concepts here that I saw that I really liked that I think are going to work well within the system. So the first one that I want to talk about here is they ran a formation that was basically this right here. All right, so they had our tight end wide off the line. So wide receiver, slot receiver, wide receiver in a semi-condensed kind of look like this. They would shift our tight end in here. And then essentially what they ran was they ran mesh. So they ran Vinny Anthony right here. They ran the slot receiver. I believe it was Tyrell Henry. I could be wrong. Right here. And they put Ballard on a post. And then they ran the tight end, kind of what we call a little hunt route, where he's getting on top of all of this. And then they ran a wheel from the running back. So we got to look like this, and you could tell the progression of how they were reading this. So what they did was, and I believe this was actually Cade Yacamelli that was here, but doesn't matter. They were reading alignment here first. If the corner condensed down, which he did, and he played tighter in this condensed look, and if he did anything but widen off the snap, they went right to the wheel. So, and that's what we saw. When they meshed, they rotated. So he rotated down and they rotated over, but that was too late. And they were able to get the wheel outside and they hit it for a pretty nice gain. Other times when they would run it, if he sits out to take care of the flat and then take up on the wheel, they would read 1 to 2 to 3. So it doesn't get much more air raid than this, but what we're doing is we're adding the motion component, we're adding the movement component, and then instead of reading space, they were running to landmarks. Okay, so they would have, these guys would sit down on the hash mark, and then you would get your tight end sitting across the middle, and then you'd send the wide receiver down the post. Okay, I'm sure there is a read component with this, whether it's man or zone, but it was less about reading leverage and more about just getting to a landmark. So that's one play that I really like seeing. Okay, doesn't get more air raid than that. All right, next one they ran, and I like this one a lot. It's another variation on a very standard air raid play, and that's the snag concept. So they ran, and don't remember the exact personnel when I saw this because it was a little bit later, but the only thing I know they did, and we'll switch it here in a second, so they ran a little sit route from the wide receiver to the hash mark. Okay, I know these guys were changed. So that was your slot receiver, and that was actually your fullback at this point. And so when they ran snag, normally when you run snag, we run it out of a wider formation, kind of like this, where this outside receiver is running more of a slant sit read, so he can get farther in the formation. We'd get our corner here, and then we'd run either a flat or a bubble. I like to run it with a bubble because it creates more high-low stress on the flat defender, but a lot of times you'll actually see this as a flat. So creating a triangle read and reading usually this outside defender, and whatever he chooses is wrong. Okay, so that's basic snag concept from a typical 3-by-1 formation. How we saw it here. We got our sit route. We got our corner. But then what we got instead of our flat from the H, if we would run a flat or a bubble from the H in this situation here, there's not a lot of stress for this flat defender. He can kind of sit down the middle of both. And in fact, he could maybe even pass off this to the middle linebacker. But what they did is they ran what I call an escort bubble. So in which Jackson Aker came out here and he's running a bubble screen with our running back. So he's looking to pick up anybody who comes downhill. But this creates a lot more high-low stress on this flat defender. And it's set up where this is wide open. Because another stress that this gives, too, is the middle linebacker, he needs to be thinking, he needs to get to his landmark above the slot receiver, and he needs to be gaining depth as he does it. So if he flattens to take away this little sit route, then we've got the edge killed. And so that really puts him in a stressful position. So we saw that. So those are two concepts I really like. We'll talk about one more here that I saw in a clip from earlier in the spring ball, and that is a variation of the Shanahan double post. And this is a staple West Coast offense play, a staple West Coast shot play that I think with the personnel we have is really going to work well. So a lot of times what you would get with this is you're going to get a motion setting up a wide zone, little poke play action, and then we're running double post. Okay, we got two posts, and when we run double posts, I like to have them running to the same landmark. We're just at different sides of the field. All right, so obviously with the college and the NFL, we're running these posts at 15, 20 yards. Because of the limitations of huddle, we're just going to run these a little bit shorter, so we're going to run them at 10 yards. So we're going to send, and usually, make this a little better. We're going to put this to the hash mark here. Condense this a little bit more so these landmarks are a little bit more easier to see. So we're putting his landmark at the hash mark on the goal line. Come on. Right there. Okay. Then our second receiver, we're going to run him to the same landmark from the other side of the field. And what that is going to do is essentially going to create one higher and one lower. And then that is going to mess with the rotation of the defense when the rest of the routes in this go in. And so what we would see is usually the tight end would run the variation of either a flat route or he would stay in protection. We would get a bubble or a flat from the motion guy. We'll put him in there. And then a lot of times what that caused would be rotation. Either the safety would rotate down, we would rotate back, whatever, and we would end up in a situation where we got a single high look, where we'd rotate here and we'd rotate to maybe a hole defender here, something like that. And then we would just high-low read this high safety. Variation that would come off of this that we saw last year, actually, that I'm assuming will still be in it here, is the tight end would engage in a block here, and then he would just leak to the backside and sit back there. So this would be the look we'd see. I did not see it at the spring showcase, but I did see it in clips from some of the practices in the McLean Center. So again, play action. If we get the free ball here, great. Otherwise, we go 1 to 2, and we read the double post, and then we've got the leak going to the backside. So another two variations of the passing game that I'm really liking. Obviously, we've got to work on timing. We've got to work on continuity, but spring ball is practice. And what we saw was a practice, things that they're working on. And I think this is going to be another play that's going to be in there. But again, we're seeing air raid concepts on top of pro-style mentality and pro-style building of an offense. All right. Let's get back to where we were before, and let's talk about what else we've got to look forward to. All right, so we talked about it with the fundamental air raid concepts on top of the pro style mentality. We saw a lot of shot plays into the end zone, which is something we did not see a lot in the Phil Longo era. And those are just going to be situations where our outside receivers have got to do a better job winning individual battles. And those are going to build off of the wide zone. All right, so next up, let's talk about the quarterbacks and my impression of what we saw at spring ball of our quarterbacks. So we'll start at the bottom and we'll work our way up to the top. Carter Smith is highly athletic. I think if he had to be put in a game, they would create a package for him that he could succeed. He is a high upside athlete with natural arm talent, but you can tell that the speed of the game is a lot faster than he's used to coming straight out of high school. And he threw one really bad pick at the spring showcase that it's probably the type of play that he made a million times in high school and got away with it. And he needs to make those mistakes to then see it on film so he knows what to work on going forward. He's going to be a good one. He needs time. That being said, he's going to have to work hard to push Danny O'Neil, because what I really like about Danny is, he's 6 feet tall, but he plays taller. The height of a quarterback really does not have a lot to do with his ability to find open receivers and to navigate the pocket, etc. There has been plenty of shorter quarterbacks who have succeeded in the NFL. Russell Wilson, who is shorter than Danny O'Neil, comes to mind. And what I saw from Danny was a quick release, not the biggest arm in the world, but nice, compact throwing motion. He threw on rhythm, and he has an ability to, when the pocket breaks down, a la a Russell Wilson type, he's not just going to take off to the line of scrimmage and run. He's got his eyes downfield. He's got his passing grip still on the ball until he gets to the point where he needs to run. And that is an ability that an athletic quarterback rarely is taught to use. A lot of times athletic quarterbacks are poorly coached, and in which their offense coordinators and quarterback coaches are just enamored by their athletic ability. I think Michael Vick is a perfect example of that. Danny O'Neil, you can tell, has been taught how to play quarterback. And he knows that his job is to throw the football efficiently and whenever possible. So yes, he can run. Yes, they are going to build QB run game around him, but he's going to be a solid passer in the Big Ten. And then Billy Edwards. I think he controlled the offense well. Obviously, they ran the most complete version of the offense while he was in at quarterback. He showed good command, especially early in the scrimmage. Pressure affected his progression. Obviously, they're still working out the left tackle spot, but he was able to navigate the pressure and either take off and run or keep his eyes downfield. There are situations that I saw where he was tagged down, where I don't think he was actually down. I think he actually would have been able to make a play. And I think the offense is in good hands around him. I think he is a plus game manager in that he is going to be able to facilitate the offense how it's needed. He is going to be able to make plays as needed. And then when the game is put in position where he needs to make the play, he has the ability to make the play. I'm not saying he's going to make the play, but he has the ability to make the play. And that is a positive thing, hopefully going forward, to lead a run-first offense. All right, next up. So just some general impressions of the showcase in general, in terms of how the plays were called and how they were going forward. There were still some red zone challenges. I think what ended up happening that really caused problems was something we'll talk about when we do the defense version of this, is the defense's approach to red zone defense was to put pressure. and they caused some confusion, especially in the pass blocking. There was a couple situations where there were plays, set up pretty well off of play action on the goal line that our receivers just ran the wrong routes or read the alignment wrong, and so that's stuff that needs to be fixed in practice. And there were still some struggles with physicality with some of the receivers. I think Jaden Ballard had some physicality issues in short situations. Vinny Anthony was better. Tyrell Henry has to still work on that. Chris Brooks, I think you're going to see him become a short yardage and short red zone especially, replacement for one of those two outside receivers because he brings the total package. So I think that's going to be able to fix it there. And, I thought when they got into third and fourth down situations, they did a good job of scheming open concepts in those situations. We saw a lot of variations of stick and mesh, and I believe that they are working to give quick answers in those situations. So where we would see last year where we would get your various levels reads, leverage reads, we saw more triangle reads, more high-low and inside-out reads. So that's going to make the passing in those situations that much easier. And I also think with a play like wide zone in the run game, it is a play that can hit for big yards in long situations where defenses are widened out and are playing deeper because they have to guard the sticks. That is really going to help to have a run play that is going to force defenses to keep the line of scrimmage in mind going forward. All right. Next up, let's talk about the receiver group and the tight end group. And then I think we're already 45 minutes into this. We need to kind of get working on this. Might be a long video. But all right, so let's talk about receivers. As a whole, is the deepest position on the offense. It's not even close. It's probably one of the deepest positions on the offense. In that you have your older, more experienced players like Jaden Ballard and Vinny Anthony, who I think are going to lead. You got Chris Brooks, who I think finally is going to have his role, and he stayed healthy. Tyrell Henry really stepped up in the absence of Trech Kakahuna as a good inside-out slot receiver who could do a little bit of everything. And then you have somebody like Eugene Hilton Jr., who is going to be a contributing factor on this offense as a true freshman because he has clearly the most athletic upside of anybody on the offense. He is raw, but he has effortless speed. And he has effortless route running. You can tell he's been running routes since he was a little kid. Obviously, his dad has taught him well. And right there, you have 5 receivers, and I even talked about Trech, who could impact this offense in various ways. And that's the depth that we need. Because now that we're running a system that's going to be a little less cerebral, we can rely on more people, and we're going to need it. Excuse me. We're going to need more athletes to keep this offense going on the outside. The tight end group, it was a bit of a mixed bag, obviously, because we had Tanner Koziel leave for Houston. But as I was suspecting, I think Jackson Aker has emerged as the tight end who is going to get the lead tight end role. Meaning more of the offense is going to be based around what he does when he's on the field than anybody else. That's not to say he's going to be leading the tight end group in catches and touches. Far from it. But he is going to be a more of a pivot point of the offense than Tucker Ashcraft and Grant Steck, who emerged as the number 1A and 1B inline tight ends. I think their route running, their blocking was solid. Steck is a little stiff still. I think he's recovering from injury as well. Ashcraft is slowly improving. I think he will be a solid tight end in this offense. And then obviously we have the addition of Lance Mason coming in. And with the film that I've watched of him, he is going to be a nice combination of an inline tight end who can run up the seam, hit the flat, but he was also used a lot at Missouri State in essentially the role that Jackson Aker was as the H-back, pseudo fullback, did a lot of lead blocking with him. So I think he's going to find a use on the field, especially in 12 and 13 personnel formations. And that is going to allow Jackson Aker to also maybe potentially be in the conversation with the running backs as a true fullback, as a short yardage goal line tailback, and then using someone like Mason or Steck. Steck was also in the backfield as a fullback in situations like that. But the tight end role has greatly increased because they're asking them to do so much more in both the run game and the passing game with the motions, with the shifts, and the different types of blocking. We saw them split flow to the backside end, split flow, and wham a defensive tackle leaking out in the flat, running drag routes. They ran double slice a lot, where they would be two tight ends and run down blocks one direction, power the other way with the tight ends. So I think the tight end group is going to be a lot more effective to the success of the offense, and maybe a few more touches, but I think they're going to be used in a way where even maybe despite the same or maybe only slightly more touches, they're going to be that much more effective for the offense. All right, last thing I want to talk about here, because again, I realize this video is getting really long, is let's talk about the offensive line and how they are adjusting to the new offense and where we're going forward from there. I think this group is well suited for use in the wide zone. To have a system like this, you have to have offensive linemen who have size, who can run and can get to space and block in space. And I think we saw that they were really effective with that. A couple guys that I want to highlight with that. Obviously, Raleigh Mallman, his surprising increase in his athletic ability was noticeable, both getting out in front on pin and pull type concepts, but also in situations where he's climbing from the backside on a run play going away from him. He was doing a really good job of getting downfield and being athletic. Also, Jake Renfro, he is going to be a type of player who's going to be put in a situation where the guy he has to block is going to be a lot wider than he's normally used to, with the formation being spread out more than it is. And he did a really good job trusting his footwork and getting to the second level, or trusting his footwork and creating a wall on the interior that I think he's going to be a lot more effective and a solid leader of that inside group. Obviously, pass protection is something that needs to be addressed. When you get a situation where you lose your starting left tackle so close to the end of spring ball, and with the showcase, they didn't really have a chance to completely change the mentality of how they're going to run pass protection without your normal left tackle. Obviously, it's no surprise Leighton Nelson did kind of struggle in that role out there. And I think Joe Brunner is going to be that guy. He looked okay playing left tackle, and the few clips that I've seen of him doing it, he'll grow in that role. Davis Heinzen, the kid coming in from Central Michigan, I've heard he's been told he's come in to play tackle, but I need to see his athletic ability and if he can pick things up to just slide into that left tackle spot. Otherwise, I think he's going to be a serviceable left guard, and the same competition that there was for right guard is going to continue, and they're not going to swap anybody over to the other side. Other than that, the offensive line was solid. Not great, not bad. Really did well in the run game, struggled at times in pass protection, and it's because they're being asked to cover a lot more space. So obviously between now and fall camp, they need to be working on blocking in space. They need to get their adjusted protection schemes down, accounting for a new left tackle, and we need to be able to build from there because the passing game needs to be more than simple one-step drops and screens, etc. We need to be able to get the downfield passing component if this offense is going to work as effectively as we had expected going in. And so there we go. All right. So last thing that we want to talk about is kind of some final takeaways of what we saw here. I think from a schematic point of view, this offense is modernizing without purging the DNA of old school Wisconsin football. We're getting misdirection, spacing that facilitates the old school power game that we are used to. You're going to see the similar results that we saw from back in the day, but it's going to be done differently. And if you really are looking at what you're seeing, you're going to see a lot of things similar to what has been done the last couple of years. But I think it's how it's being used and the variety of ways that it's being used that it's going to look different. And hopefully it's going to result in more results. Obviously, execution needs to improve. It's spring ball. And this is practice. This is not camp. We're not installing for an opponent, but execution needs to get better. There are encouraging signs with the depth of the running back room, the ability of the offensive line to pick up the run schemes, the play designs that are going to show that there's a path to growth within the system. But it is going to be the emerging final position battles at left tackle, at right guard, at tight end, and in the slot that are really going to shape how this offense goes forward and how we build it to be a successful system. I'm encouraged by what I see. I am not going to get hopeful. I am not going to get excited until I see them line up against Miami of Ohio once the season starts. But from what I've seen from my couch, from my desk, through my laptop, it's going to be a fun offense to watch. It's a step in the right direction. Maybe it's one step back to take 2 steps forward. If that helps some sweater vests sleep at night, then so be it. I think the Jeff Grimes hire was a good one, and I'm looking forward to seeing the offense on the field because I'm choosing to be positive about what our offense is doing and not assuming that automatically means something's wrong with the defense. So that's where we're going to leave it right there. Next time we do a video like this, we'll do another in focus video on what we saw from the defense from spring and especially the spring showcase. A lot has changed. And again, it is the idea of taking maybe 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward with the defensive coaching staff and with the use of the players and with the roster we have that is going to fix the holes that was obviously found in these last 2 years in the new Big Ten, but also the changing college football landscape. So that'll be next time. Until then, thank you for suffering through almost an hour of me blabbering, and we'll see you next time.